What is going on, YouTube? Again, thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Maharry, joined alongside me as semi-always now, Blayne Gilmer, and this is the UGASports call-in show where you, the fan, get to call in and talk to us, get your questions answered. We haven't had a lot of questions recently. We want that to change this time, this go-around. But pleasure to be on with you guys. As always, Sunday nights, we want to wrap up your week, make sure that we get all of your questions answered. Busy week for Georgia in terms of visits, in terms of college football playoff potentially expanding, Demetrius Robertson transferring. What does that mean? We've done a lot more this week. I know Roddy and the gang has. I've been on the beach sipping some cold beverages, Blayne, but a lot of stuff on YouTube, a lot of instant reaction stuff, but we're going to kind of wrap that all up for you guys into one show. So if you did miss those, unfortunately, we will kind of cover that for you here as well. So Blayne, first off, how are you, my man? And second off, you've been busy with these visitors in Athens trying to cover these guys.
No doubt. I'm doing great, better than I deserve, Paul. I mean, it's just been a crazy week. The first 2 weeks of June here, we knew we're going to have a lot of ups and downs in terms of recruiting, and people are, at the very least, you can definitely, people on the board, they are tenuous, man. Tensions are high. People are living and dying with every little thing, and that's what's beautiful about college football and about college football recruiting, man. As things go up and down in terms of the recruiting, people are, especially the diehards, are all in. They're all great about it, and then they're down in the lowest of valleys in the next 2 seconds. So seems like Eric Gilbert. We've
covered that. We've covered that. I don't know which one it is. You go with yours.
I think I've been confirmed that it's Eric, so we're going to go with Eric Gilbert.
I don't know. First of all, I don't know if that's changing. I think it's just going to stay Eric. But if it has changed, cool. But I think Eric is going to be the way to go. We'll see in the official pronunciation guide. But go ahead. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Well, it seems like a long time since Gilbert and Darren Kendrick arrived on campus. There's been so much that has happened since, with the opening of all the recruiting and stuff. So looking forward to covering everything.
First off, I know it's not one of the topics for tonight. We have official visitors, college football playoff expanding. Dave McMahon's going to join us in a little while to talk about his stats. And as always, your questions, guys. Please, if you're watching, put it into the chat where you're watching us from, or if you have any questions. Also, the phone line is open if you want to give us a call, 706-363-3773. Blayne, what I want to start off with first while I tweet all this out and get everything out in the open was the news of Demetrius Robertson transferring, and now this is going to be his third college. I think just from covering him, and I covered his recruitment way back when, I actually had a Facebook memory, I think it was 5 years ago. It was someday while I was on the beach last week where we were up at the 5-Star Challenge. Julian Rochester was there. Mecole, it feels really weird. Mecole was there. He's been in the league for 3 years now. Demetrius Robertson was there, D'Angelo Gibbs, Julian Rochester, Nigel Warrior, EJ Price. I mean, tons of kids. That State of Georgia class was really loaded that year. But it was funny because Demetrius popped up on that memory on my Facebook photo, and here he is now leaving Georgia once again, this time not leaving the state to go play at Cal, but this time leaving the University of Georgia to put his name into the portal. What can you tell us about that, Blayne, and how will this affect Georgia moving forward?
I don't know how big of an effect it's going to have on the University of Georgia moving forward. Listen, D-Rob was definitely going to provide depth for the Georgia Bulldogs, but I do not think that he was in a position where he was going to be a starter or see a ton of playing time. And I think that is one reason the young man's decided to transfer. All the best to him, because he is definitely a terrific athlete and can be electrifying with the ball in his hands. And it just, regardless what people want to think, even with George Pickens going down, things like that, our own Anthony Dasher put out an article this week. Georgia is really, really as loaded and as deep at wide receiver as they've ever been, and didn't seem like the type of situation that you want to come back for an extra year of eligibility to be in if you're Demetrius Robertson. So he's going to go find somewhere where he'll probably get a bigger, more lion share of the reps.
I know for him, I know it has to be frustrating, and for us covering his recruitment, say what you want. The Cal picture that he painted, and then it was upside down when he announced his decision. Folks say that was, kind of reminiscent of his recruiting. Every interaction I had with him, I enjoyed him, and he was always a really nice guy. He answered questions. He seemed genuine. I don't know how whichever way you say it. He seemed that. But I'm just pulling up his stats right now. His stats at Cal, his freshman year, Blayne, were ridiculous. 50 receptions, 767 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And then 2017, 7 receptions, 70 yards. 2018 doesn't play. 2019, 30 receptions for 333 yards. And then last year, 12 receptions, 110 yards. I think a lot of people had higher expectations for him, I think himself included. It was one of those things where I know when he got to campus at Georgia, the reason he wasn't getting on the field was he just wasn't that great of a blocker, and Georgia likes their wide receivers to block heavily on the outside, and he just wasn't getting the blocking concept down. And then you move on. I think realistically the best landing spot for D-Rob would be at a non-Power 5 school like a UCF. Go down there with Gus Malzahn for a year and see if you can boost your draft stock. All of the best to D-Rob in his now third go-around in the recruiting cycle, and I hope it works out for him. Like Blayne said, though, folks, I think Georgia is set at wide receiver. I don't know if this is such a big loss for Georgia as folks might think. Yes, obviously he was a 5-star coming out of high school. He showed promise at Cal. It just never worked out at Georgia. And sometimes guys go on to greener pastures, if you will, and they blow up. D-Rob might be one of those guys. You see it a lot of times in baseball. Adam Duvall for the Braves. He left and, is killing it for the Marlins. It just happens, right?
What a decision that was.
Yeah, right. Yeah, looking back on it now, come on. But yeah, it happens. And it happens in college football, and it's going to happen a lot more frequently now that this transfer portal is such a big play in college football. You've seen it for the past few years in college basketball, where you get a big-time guy leaving a school. He wasn't producing there. He goes to another school, and next thing you know, he's got 20 points a game. This could be the case for Demetrius Robertson. I don't want Georgia fans to look back on this and say, oh, well, what could have been? He had his opportunity. He had his chance. He just couldn't get on the field. Best of luck to him. And I think if he lands at the right spot, Blayne, I really think he could have a breakout year and hopefully get himself drafted next year.
Well, people have to remember, too, when Dominic Blaylock came in, he surpassed the playing time of Demetrius Robertson a lot in that year, in his freshman year. Well, now he's coming back off of his, 2 ACL injuries that he had an ACL and then re-injured it. And now, so we're looking at Dominic Blaylock coming back, added to that receiving core. You got Marcus Rosemary Jacksaint, who's coming back from injury as well. Eric Gilbert now he is listed as a wide receiver. He is going to be treated as a wide receiver. And, it's just a lot of bodies there. Justin Robinson's a guy who Georgia is looking to take that next step, who is a big, physical, really talented guy. Even last year, Paul, I don't know if you remember in some press conferences towards the end of the year, there were people asking about some guys who were coming along. Kirby Smart even mentioned Ladd McConkey towards the end of the year, saying if Ladd hadn't gotten hurt, hadn't tweaked a hamstring or something that he was dealing with soft tissue wise, that he was coming along to be able to play. So Georgia has a lot of bodies in that wide receiver room.
I mean, even Jalen Johnson, Blayne. I mean, Jalen Johnson was a walk-on that, stole a ton of reps last year. A lot of folks are wondering who he was. I think he's, submitted himself in that rotation, so to speak. Really, really good outside blocker. So, like folks are saying in the chat, Martin, Robert, and Derek are all saying, go get him, best of luck, D-Rob. I don't think this was a situation where both parties left pissed. Maybe D-Rob was because of the playing time. But at the same time, I think this is one of those where maybe Kirby Smart, after recruiting D-Rob for so long, right, and bringing him to Georgia, leaving the door open for him after leaving Cal, and having that great relationship with him, sat him down and said, look, man, the snaps just aren't there for you. I want to see you succeed. You might want to transfer, might want to go look at a school like, I don't know, Cincinnati. Go up there with Desmond Ridder for a year. Let him throw you the ball around. you're a good player. You're just not fitting into our system, and best of luck. And I think that truly is what it is. And just from seeing folks in the chat, I think that's the fan base's reaction as well. This will be one guy to watch next year and see what he does, Blayne. I think that he has the potential to maybe break out somewhere else. Moving on, though, Blayne, it's been busy on your side of the town, man, with those official visitors, unofficial visitors. It seems like everybody that is somebody has been in Athens, around Athens, at a football camp in Athens, taking official visits to Athens, seeing 5 Bar in Athens. I mean, there's been stuff going on like crazy, man. And one guy I want to talk about that is wrapping up his official visit, should be already wrapped up. I'm going to butcher the first name. Enai White? Is that how you say it?
Enai, something along those lines. But we've just gone the edge rusher from Philadelphia that is absolute terror, and Georgia would love to have him. We have not at UGA spoken directly with Enai yet. However, we have been able to contact with some resources, the program, things, some sources in the program, things of that nature. And by all accounts, Enai White had a terrific visit. He even has put some things out there showing how much he enjoyed it. And Paul, this is a real position of need for Georgia in terms of these edge rushers, because you've got guys like Adam Anderson and Nolan Smith who are going to be moving on to the pro ranks after this season. There's so many. Again, Anthony Dasher put in his notes on summer practice how Nolan Smith seems to have taken that next step, not only on the field, but even in a more leadership type role. So Georgia's definitely expecting huge things out of him. And then you have, like I said, Adam Anderson didn't get the nickname of the freak for anything. I mean, he is a physical specimen that isn't matched by many in this game. So bringing in a guy like an Enai White, bringing in a guy like a Danny Dennis Sutton, so important. Danny Dennis Sutton this weekend went to Penn State. Georgia was looking like clear favorite coming out. Now Penn State's kind of come up more neck and neck with Georgia there. So one thing, Paul, I want to caution everybody, like I was talking about the people on the board, they're tenuous. There's some stuff going up and down. Absorb every piece of information. Take everything that we're hearing, that we give you, that put out there, but also take it and realize it is June and December. Even though it seems like it's not far away, it is a long way away in terms of recruiting. That's an eternity from now. So, yeah,
White, for me, the first thing that caught my eye was his tape. Second thing that caught my eye was same high school as Tyke Smith. Seems like Tyke is having a really good time in Athens so far, really enjoying himself. And, put those two things together. Next thing you know, you might have another guy from Philly to join the likes of Tyke Smith, Mark Webb, DeAndre Swift. I think that's a pipeline that has worked well for the Dogs, extremely well. We'll see how Tyke, right now I would grade it an A+. If Tyke comes out A++, you're getting extra credit on the next assignment. Even if your next Philly kid doesn't work out that well, you can carry that plus over from Tyke. But he's a guy that really sticks out to me in terms of just being a guy that could come in, compete. Another guy, Jalen Walker, who Georgia already has committed. I like how they balance each other out. So moving forward, White is one to watch. Also, Jacob Hood, Andre Green, both guys that took official visits this weekend that we're trying to get in touch with, and we will have updates on all three of those guys for you over on UGASports.com, The Vault, which is the recruiting portion of UGASports.com. If you're not a member, real quick plug, guys. Right now, we are running a special promotion, $20.21 for a full year. We've never done it before. We think 2021 is going to be special for Georgia. We don't want you to miss out. If you go over to register, use code. What is the code, Blayne?
I
just blanked on it. If you need the code, hit me up on Twitter or Blayne on Twitter. We will get you guys the code. I totally just blanked on it. But right now, I think it's UGA 2021. I could be totally wrong on that. But you will get your first year for $20.21, guys. And if Roddy's watching the chat, he's probably going to kill me in a second. He might put it in the chat, though, what the code is. Maybe Dave's watching. He could put it in as well. While we are waiting on that code, QFlow81, what's up, man? He says, what do you guys think is going on with recruiting? We seem to be losing some momentum. How do or will we get back in your opinion? And Martin answered the question. He said, in regards to recruiting Q flow, all that is a result of everything opening up with visits and such. And then Q has another great question of, do you think A&M gets Bear and Bowie? All their insiders seem to believe they get them both because of Nick Williams. Was Nick really that important, or is this just a road bump? So, Blayne, lot to take in right there, but Q basically says, hey, what's going on with recruiting? Georgia's lost a few commitments, few big-time commitments. What's going on with Bowie and Bear?
Well, first, the code is Georgia 2021, so you can use the code Georgia.
There we go.
To get your $20.21 first year here on UGASports.com. But in terms of recruiting, I want to encourage everyone to realize that, like one of the commenters mentioned, you've had young men who have been recruited through Zoom and text messages and phone calls, and have been hearing 9,000 different things and pitches and all that kind of stuff throughout this quarantine time, throughout the COVID era of recruiting, as it'll be known. And now the floodgates have opened. They're able to go out and see different things, and they're meeting different people in different circumstances that are radically changing. Imagine you're 17, 18 years old, and you've got, you go to one place and you've got a guy who makes $8.5 million a year telling him how bad he wants you to be a part of his program. Then you go to the next place, same thing. It's over and over again. There's going to be ups and downs, but some of these big major recruits, I know they specifically mentioned Bear and Deion Bowie. Bear Alexander is someone that Georgia wanted and still wants tremendously, because of he is the type of player that can be a true anchor in the middle of that defense with Jordan Davis, with Devontae White gone year after year for the next 3-4 years. That's the kind of guy, and they will continue to recruit him. Of course, Texas A&M, absolutely. The reason that it's not necessarily that Nick Williams is like the greatest recruiter in the world. He is a very good recruiter, but the fact remains is that he was doing a great job for Georgia recruiting Bear Alexander and Deion Bowie. And what I mean by that is I talked to Deion Bowie at the Cam Newton 7-on-7, and he said, I talked to Nick Williams every day. Kojo and Twice told me the same thing. I talked to Nick Williams every day. So when you have that main point of contact, that's what's going on here in terms of those guys. They were been in contact with him every day. Does not mean that Georgia can't get back into things. Doesn't mean that Georgia's not going to continue to try to recruit those guys. But there's also, plenty of other guys out there that they're going to be recruiting. Travis Shaw, in terms of the defensive tackle aspect. You mentioned Jalen Walker a while ago, Paul. Jalen Walker is going hard after Travis Shaw. And I know other guys like Malachi Starks, who's been committed to Georgia for a while, he's going after guys like that hard as well. So they've got a lot on that front. And Walter Nolan, people are going absolutely nuts about Walter Nolan because he's saying different things here and there.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be such a fun one. Oh, it's going to be a fun one.
It's going to last all the way until signing day. And with Walter Nolan, all I can tell you is that Georgia feels very good about where they were after the visit with Walter Nolan. Plain and simple. That's what we've heard through multiple different sources here at UGAsports.com. So I would encourage everybody. One biggest thing, Paul, that everybody needs to be concerned about is if you're someone who has a vested interest in Georgia recruiting, you need to pay attention to September 4th. Because if Georgia takes care of business against what'll probably be the either somewhere between number 1 and number 3 ranked team in the country on national television in one of the most watched games in the entire year, and they look good doing so, Georgia will be having to turn away commitments. That's how that class. Georgia has reached the point they have the best facilities out there, unmatched, and the only thing they're lacking now is show it on the field, show the product on the field. And they've been good on the field, but they haven't been elite. They've had elite years, but consistently elite. That's what Georgia has to show, and they can start by doing that on September 4th.
What's funny to me, Blayne, is what you brought up, Nick Williams, and I don't know why. The light bulb just kind of went off in my head. I think it's when you said Kojo, because Kojo, it seems to be down to Georgia-Texas A&M fight. You've got Bear, you've got Bowie. It seems like, to me, Jimbo Fisher made a great investment bringing Nick Williams onto the staff, because if you can just get those 3 guys out of Nick, I mean, it's paid for his salary tenfold, just getting those 3 guys. Not to say that they are, but it gives them a better chance. I think Georgia was in the driver's seat. Obviously, two of them were committed to Georgia. I think Georgia, was 1-2 or, whichever way you wanted to go for Kojo. I think this really helps Texas A&M with those three guys. But like Blayne was saying, there are a ton more guys on the board. Evan Stewart's a guy that pops in my head at wide receiver. You've got a lot of guys, Chaz Preston. I mean, a lot of guys at different positions that Georgia's still looking at. So if they were to strike out with Bear, and by all accounts, Georgia's still recruiting him heavily. It's going to be key to continue to recruit him heavily. I think Bear's really enjoying the process. I saw he was recently down in Miami taking a visit. I think Bear has now realized that, we can take visits now. And a lot of schools like USC, for example, I know Roddy mentioned this. I don't remember which instant piece he was doing. He was doing a reaction piece on YouTube where Michael Williams, Christian Miller were out at USC. They're not going to use one of their official visit spots to bring kids in if they're committed to another school. So I think a lot of these kids wanted to secure their spots in case of, COVID lasting longer and them not being able to visit campuses, kind of like how last year's class had to secure their spots early. They wanted to secure their spots. Now that they see they can take visits, well, it might change things. Obviously, we've seen some decommits from Georgia. I think you're going to see decommits from other places as well. So, I wouldn't shy away from saying that Georgia's still recruiting Bowie and Bear, but I just wanted to bring that up as with Nick Williams being looks like right now a great hire for Texas A&M, giving them a shot with both of those guys. Let's get over to these comments here real quick before we get over to the college football playoff expanding. Let's see here. I think we've missed a few. Martin says we've got a whole season to go. A strong season and a natty helps. Just saying. Yeah, Martin. Blayne just said the exact same thing. Let's see. Barry Anderson, hearing that Branson Robinson bailed on Clemson this weekend, ... He thinks Branson is all dog. You heard anything about that, Blayne?
Well, if you take advantage of that promo code, guys, the Georgia 2021, and go to UGASports.com, you would have had all the notes from Roddy, who talked to the sister site over at Clemson on the Rivals Network, and did mention that Branson Robinson was not there. Also, we've heard that you saw last week, we were talking about how Alabama took Le'Veon Moss at running back. So if you're holding out hope on Branson Robinson, you're not taking Le'Veon Moss. If you're Clemson and you really think you have a chance with Branson Robinson, he's going to show up at your elite retreat. Neither one of those things came to fruition. So you have to be feeling very, very good if you're on that Georgia staff about where you sit with Branson Robinson.
Let's see here. Q-Flow says, why would Nolan go to Florida? Grantham will only be there one more year, right? ? Who knows, man. Grantham has a way, Q-Flow, of getting into crazy long contracts and getting his contracts renewed. I don't know how. Man must be a great talker at the negotiator table. He might be there another 5 or 6, man. And if that's the case, Georgia fans should be rejoicing on that. Martin says, can Georgia pull Walter and Bear? Blayne, what's your thoughts on that? Give me a percentage on that. Walter and Bear.
0.
Okay, thank you. Bear, good question though, Martin. But yeah, I don't think 0% getting Walter and Bear. Let's see, Barry Anderson. If Georgia were to get Branson, my goodness, another Chubb all over again. This kid's special. Yeah, I mean we've said it numerous times. The kid is extremely special. And yeah, that's all you need. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about Branson Robinson that hasn't been said already. I mean, the kid is a freak, comes in day one. He's your power back, but he can run a 4-5. I mean, the kid's crazy good. Really, really good running back. And Rivals just moved him up, if I'm not mistaken, to a 5-star. So, doesn't happen often with running backs. Branson is the real deal. Philip Beck has a check by his name in the comments, Blayne. I don't know how you get a check by your name, but this guy must be important, and I'm sorry if I don't know who you are, Philip, but he's got a check, so he's serious. We're going to read what he's got to say. He said, agreed, savvy move by Jimbo to snag Williams from Georgia. Yeah, it really was. When you look at it and take it for what it's worth and then kind of a broader overview, it seems like to me, huge hire by Jimbo. Paid him a ton of money, left Georgia on kind of a sour note. Paid him a ton of money, left Georgia on a sour note. that doesn't seem to bode well in terms of moving up the ranks. Coaches talk a lot. You might see, Todd Monken might be the head coach at West Virginia 3 years from now, and Nick Williams is wanting a job, and he's going to remember this. It seems to always come full circle in college football, Blayne.
Well, you also talked about Jimbo Fisher and how it was a shrewd move on his part. It also should let people know where Texas A&M is with things right now. They paid Jimbo Fisher a lot of money. He's getting paid he's the third highest paid coach behind Nick Saban and Ed Orgeron per year. So, he is,
and not only per year, they get him for like 10 years guaranteed. Oh, yeah. So yeah,
absolutely. And so, guaranteed as long as they're able to, stand him still there.
Right.
It's not been the ideal start for Jimbo Fisher. They had a decent year last year, but I think everybody, good or bad, needs to take 2020 and throw it in the trash can because of all the COVID things and stuff like that. Doesn't matter at all. So I think Jimbo Fisher knew he's got a lot to prove in a short amount of time. And one way to mask potential shortfalls, especially when you lose a guy like Kellen Mond, who has been highly productive quarterback, and now you're bringing in a new quarterback regime, and Jimbo Fisher's known as the quarterback whisperer, if you will. So what happens if this young freshman quarterback or be a sophomore now, Hayes King, what happens if he doesn't do well? Well, at least you got some hot buzz on the recruiting trail if Nick Williams has helped you secure Bear Alexander, Deon Bowie, Kojo Antwi. Be like, listen, guys, not having a great year this year, but we just stole 3 guys who were supposed to go to Georgia, all that kind of stuff. It's all a game. He's playing chess right now. Saban, Smart do the same kind of things, but Texas A&M's in a spot where they need to have good news and win in a hurry.
Yeah, and good luck to Nick. I don't know if it was the right move. Obviously, it was for his pockets, but coaching circles are close, man. It's a lot of a lot of coaches talk, and they don't just talk about football. They talk about support staffers. They talk about everybody. So when the coaches are looking for that next step, that next big name, they might look and say, oh, whoa, kind of went bad at Georgia, but good luck to them. Let's see here. Moving on. College football playoff is expanding potentially. I think it's going to. They wouldn't put this out unless it was, right, Blayne? I mean, it seems like one of those things that's just kind of inevitable. They're going to vote on it. But for the most part, we will go with the fact that we think the college football playoff is expanding to 12 teams, and man, does this hurt Georgia fans, because there's been plenty of years in the recent years where they've been left out, and now it's happening. But it's happening. So, Blayne, initial thoughts?
I see where college football purists would be upset by this. I see where people who grew up loving the memories of New Year's Day bowl games and how significant they were, and the traditional rivalries and natural rivalries that resulted out of these bowl games. However, it is just no longer the case in the social climate of today, where you're going to be able to get away with any small selective group. I don't care if it's in society or in sports, dominating a space. It's got to be more distributed, more spread out, things of that nature. It just patterns itself after society today. So I think it was, as Ed Orgeron said yesterday, it was inevitable. Kirby Smart called it one of the most significant changes that will have come to major college football, which is the truth. If you're a Georgia fan, a Georgia supporter, you should be rejoicing over this right now, because Georgia, unless something catastrophic happens year in and year out, will be in the playoff every year. I mean, every single year they'll be in the playoff.
That's what Q-Flow just said in the chat. You're exactly right. Yeah.
I mean, unless you just have a terrible year, you lose a game to Florida, something happens crazy like it did a few years back, you lose a Hail Mary game to Tennessee, something like that goes just nuts, then you could see yourself slipping out. But the University of Georgia, they win the SEC East. They play for an SEC championship. they should find themselves in the playoffs year in, year out. So, whether you're a fan of the format or not, at least, teams are going to have an opportunity to play for the championship out on the field. And, of course, there's player safety concerns, there's all that kind of stuff. But I think Roddy said in the reaction to this week, he's like, you'll see these guys practicing, working out, and then going to grab a bite to eat, and then they're going and playing pickup basketball in the gym. So these are young men that have a lot of energy and things like that. So there's legitimate injury concerns and things like that. But I think, especially with NIL making its way into the sport, there will be
Blayne,
a way
you're
to
taking my talking points, Blayne. I was gonna slide in so smooth right behind you right there with that. Damn it. Go ahead. I was just gonna say there'll be a little extra cheese on the Whopper, and for these players for playing in these playoff games. No, yeah, you're exactly right. And I think this 12-team playoff, just to go with that NIL, I've lost my train of thought. I had something killer to say, but you hit the nail on the head. NIL with these 12-team playoffs now, yes, there's more injury concerns, but yes, there's more money to be made, not just by the schools, but by the players themselves as well. So, as the overall aspect of it, like you said, college football purists that really want Georgia and Georgia Tech to matter, which it hasn't the past 10 years anyway, but they really want that game to matter, and it does for rivalry purposes, but those type of games aren't going to matter as much. You're going to want to pack your schedule full of teams, and Dash had a great article over on UGASports about it, his dashboard, which if you don't read that, then you're not reading UGAsports.com, because Dash does a great job with his dashboard. He speaks his mind a little bit on things, and he said, look, there was a method to Kirby Smart's madness when he brought on all these big-name schools. When was it, last year, Blayne, that Georgia just started adding every team you could possibly think of out of conference that has any stature in the college football rankings? They were like, yeah, we're going to play those guys in 2029. Sure. Oklahoma, yeah, put them on the schedule. They just started throwing names out of a hat. They were all 5-star programs, and folks were like, these are cool, but you still have to play an SEC schedule. Well, now it kind of all makes sense, right? Because you're still playing your SEC schedule. Obviously, you want to win the SEC, but now you're not fighting for 4 spots. You're fighting for 12. And if you have a slip up against a Missouri or a Kentucky in SEC ball, which, is bound to happen one year or, every other year, there's going to be a slip up where you bang your head and you lose to Missouri, but you've got that win against Oklahoma, in week 2. Now the committee looks at you and says, all right, a 3-loss Georgia team, they stumbled because of injuries and the SEC play for 2 weeks. They've really got a great out-of-conference schedule. Let's put them at 12. They're in the playoff. They've got a chance. So we've got a lot of people talking about this in the chat now about the playoff, and I want to know folks' opinions. Robert Piper says he does not like 12 due to the bye for top 4 teams. Lesser-ranked teams beat each other up, and then to have to take on the top 4 who sat at home. 8 would have been better. But also, so I see where you're saying there, Robert. I'm going to pass this over to you in a second, Blayne. But also, that gives a college, and gives UGA, gives Alabama, whoever, that gives them that extra incentive to get to the top 4. So you're not just fighting, like I said, to get in the 12. You're really fighting for top 4 in that bye week. That's my thought on it.
Look at the NFL. If you've got 2 teams that are 12-2 going into the last 2, well, it's going to switch to like 17 games now.
Yeah, I was going to say you're off by 1 now, but yeah, I get what you're saying. If
you're like 12-2, and they really, if the bye wasn't there, would they really be fighting each other or would they just say, hey, we're going to have to play a first-round game anyways. Let's start resting guys. Let's do stuff like that. So that's one way to look at it in terms of that extra incentive, like you said, to go win. I wanted to bring up an example. Let's look at the 2017 year where Georgia goes to the Rose Bowl and faces Oklahoma. They beat Auburn to give Auburn their 3rd loss, but Auburn before that game was playing better than anyone in the country.
Yes, I remember that, yes.
Paul, they finished with 3 losses and they were 7th in the country. Under this system, Auburn gets into the playoff. And that is not an Auburn team that anybody wanted to face again. Even after Georgia handled them in the SEC championship game, if you'd ask Kirby Smart and them, did they want to see that Auburn team again? By no means. Auburn was a good team that year. They were playing really, really well. So, especially if the running back was healthy. So we'll see.
Even look at Georgia last year, Blayne. I know some folks were down on them, and yes, they had a ton of kids opt out for the Sugar Bowl, but they were playing really good ball once JT Daniels started getting going. They would have made the playoff last year. They would have played my math is going to be totally off on this because the top 4 are buys. They would have been ninth?
They were the 8th seed, I think.
8th seed, so they would have gotten
Alabama in the second round. They would have played Cincinnati like they did.
Yeah, you're right. And then they would have gotten Alabama. So, even Coach Saban, I think, said, hey, Georgia's a really hot team right now, yada, yada, yada. So, I think a lot of folks in the chat right now are saying, let's see, I'm going to read all your comments, guys, I promise. Jason Crosby, a 12-team playoff, I think it will be regular season football. Bigger teams will start to play tougher opponents, like we spoke about. Martin says, 12 is too many. Look back. Has there ever been an 8th-ranked team you think can win it all? Well, to Blaine's point, Auburn was pretty good in 2017. They were a 7th seed, but you can't tell me, Blayne, you cannot tell me that 12th-ranked Coastal Carolina going to Notre Dame last year wouldn't have been must-watch college football. I would have watched the hell out of that game. I watched Coastal Carolina and BYU as the best game of the year. You tell me Coastal Carolina is now getting a chance, the Cinderella of all Cinderellas is now getting a chance to potentially go to the college football playoff, which they would have. They would have gone to Notre Dame, and we all know how Notre Dame does in the playoffs. Next thing you know, Coastal Carolina's in the second round. You can't tell me that wouldn't be cool, man.
At the very least, there would have been an awesome 30 for 30 because Coastal Carolina, it was, mullets versus Mormons. Then you would have had mullets versus Catholics.
Yes.
That would have been a great matchup.
Yes.
How that goes. I mean, there would have been some incredible memes that come out of that.
Oh my goodness.
So just for entertainment purposes, that would have been great. Let me tell you something. I don't think too many people in the Power 5 conferences, Paul, would have wanted to mess with a hot Liberty team last year with Malik Willis, who's maybe going to end up being, some people are talking about him being the number 1 overall pick next year. So there's going to be, and I think Ole Miss has to play them early on. My goodness, how many points will be scored in that game with Lane Kiffin and Hugh Freeze? No defense played whatsoever. So
none.
There are some teams that are going to highly benefit from this. And listen, it's going to happen. So we can either be mad about it or we can kind of embrace it and find the benefits of it.
Let's see. Q-Flow says, Martin, dude, I love you guys that are watching the chat. I've really grown to know a lot of you guys. Martin and Q-Flow, you guys have your own conversations throughout the whole chat, and I absolutely love it because I go back and read the chat and watch you guys just talk the whole time, and it's great stuff, and I appreciate it so much. But Q-Flow says, Martin, I think the only real contenders will be the top 6 through 7. I think 8 through 12 have a chance to be sacrificial lambs. I don't know. I think, and the reason I want to bring this up is I think looking at, had it been from 2011 to 2020, here's the teams that would have gotten in at just once, okay? Any more than once, I'm not going to name them, but Arizona, Arkansas, Cincinnati, Coastal Carolina, Colorado, Houston, Indiana, Iowa State, Memphis, Miami, Mississippi State, Missouri, North Carolina, Northern Illinois, Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, Utah, and Western Michigan. The reason I say all of those, Blayne, is to say 95% of those schools I just named would never get into a Final Four. It's just not going to happen. And yes, I know this is a Georgia-centric chat. We're talking to Georgia fans who expect to be in the college football playoff every single year or close to it. But think of it as being an Iowa State fan or an Iowa fan. You get that one chance, man, to be in there. You never know. We've got a caller, though, Blayne. Let's get him in here. Hey, you are on with Blayne and Paul. How's it going this evening? Who are we speaking with?
How you doing, Lane? This is Chuck.
Chuck?
Yeah, this is Chuck.
What's going on, Chuck? Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling y'all from South Georgia,
South
Georgia.
Valdosta. Okay, man. It's hot down there right now, man. How you holding up?
Yeah, it's hot. I'm holding up good. Just telling y'all I enjoyed the show. My first time calling in.
Yeah, what you got in your mind, Chuck?
I wanted to talk about how you think Eric Gilbert really replace George Pickens, or because I see like if you measure them up and stuff, like they have the similar measurement. But do you think he bring enough to like totally replace Pickens?
I'll let you take that one, Blayne.
Well, I was just going to say Eric Gilbert is in a position now where George Pickens, Chuck, would not have had to – George Pickens would have obviously been the same caliber of player and a terrific target, but George Pickens would not have had to been relied upon as much this year because of the growing talent around him. Like we said, Jermaine Burton is an absolute bona fide number one caliber receiver in himself. You've got Dominic Blaylock coming back, Marcus Rosemary-Jackson, Justin Robinson. So Eric Gilbert is absolutely physically, in my mind, the near equivalent of George Pickens and may even do certain things better. But I think what you're having to see is that what I'm saying is that I don't think that he has to be what George Pickens has been the last couple of years because there's more around him.
Okay, I understand that. I understand that. And I want to ask one more question.
Yeah, man.
Since we talked about that, what is your predictions on Eric Gilbert numbers for the season? After the season's over this season, what do you think his numbers will be?
Oh, man.
Catches in the season and touchdowns.
Okay, I'm going to go – ooh, this is tough, man, because Georgia has a ton of weapons, and I haven't thought of this to be 100% honest with you. I'm going to go 35 receptions, 500 yards, 7 touchdowns. Blayne?
Okay. I like that.
What you got, Blayne?
I mean, I think he's going to be the bona fide number one target, but I do think that the tight end group is going to be so prevalent this year that, like Paul, instead of him being up in the 700-800 yard range for a number one receiver, I think he'll be more down in the 500-600 yard range, just because of Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington and John Fitzpatrick, all those guys getting catches at the tight end position, which I think those are going to increase this year the number of receptions to the tight ends.
Okay. Thanks for answering my question, guys. I love the show. I always try to catch you when I can, and just keep doing good, fellas. Go Dogs.
Hey, Chuck, take it easy, man. Thank you so much for calling in, man.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yo, you put us on the spot right there, Blayne. I had to write it down, though, because I don't want to get it. I don't want to have it somebody else ask me the end of the year or midway through the year. I'm going to keep a running tally of our predictions. So 35 receptions, 500 yards, 7 touchdowns for Gilbert. I feel okay with that number. Let's see here. Back to the chat real quick, guys. Let's see where we left off. Tristam West? Hope I got it right, Tristam. Correct me if I'm wrong. Says, good evening, gentlemen. College football is turning into the NFL. The NIL and transfer portal is going to ruin the game we love. I guess you could look at it that way, right, Blayne? But I think you could also look at it as the transfer portal just might, help your Georgia Bulldogs get a national championship this year. Blayne, we've actually got another caller. Let's get to him real quick.
Hit it.
Hey, guys, you are on the phone with Blayne and Paul. I can't find you. Are you there?
We lose them?
Yeah, we lost them. Call back. Blayne, I don't know. I mean, you could look at it that way, right? But also, like I said, you could look at it as your favorite team, your Georgia Bulldogs, got 3 of the best transfer portal Christmas presents you possibly could get that could make your team over the hump. 1980 could be a thing of the past.
Well, one thing that I think this playoff is going to do, Paul, is legitimate. If you had to put, make people put a amount of money that mattered significantly to them on how many teams do you think actually could win the national championship right now, that would be a very small group, a very select group, 4 or 5 teams maximum. I think what NIL, the transfer rule, and the playoffs being expanded is going to do, I think legitimately within 5-10 years, you're going to see that number double and maybe even triple. There may be 15 teams that would be capable of getting hot at the right time and winning a national championship. And I think that's better for the game. I think there's nothing else more exciting, in my opinion, than the NFL. I love the NFL playoffs. I think they're great. So the regular season is a little bit boring, and that may be what people are afraid of losing at times. But when it comes down to it, I think you're going to see some really, really great playoff matchups.
I think one thing that we haven't talked about yet through this whole kind of transfer process, college football expanding, NIL, is yes, it's going to hurt Georgia in recruiting. It's going to hurt Alabama in recruiting, Clemson in recruiting, Oklahoma in recruiting. But if you really look at it, those teams are so stacked, Blayne, compared to all the other schools out there that offer, really good education. Stanford, I mean, you could go down the list, but what was happening was there was not enough parity in college football. I think these things helped that, but it hurts if you're a Georgia fan because you might not get every kid because you might lose a kid now to NC State where the coaches are selling him and saying, hey, you've got a chance. We have a chance now to get in that 12 team. If we make a run 1 out of your 4 years, we have a chance. I don't know. Yes, of course, obviously these coaches at these other programs are selling that, right? That they're not selling that, but they actually have a legitimate argument now to say, hey, we have a chance, guys. Please come join us, and you get a 5-star out of the deal once in a while.
Well, and Paul, one thing that the commenter is right on is where it will become very similar to the NFL. Now recruiting is actually going to happen, Paul, where they're going to say, okay, you're in between a 3 and 4-star prospect here. You're kind of borderline in that realm. So what's the recruiting package or what's the marketing package that Georgia's putting together for you? Oh, so you were going to be, waiting a couple years. You're going to be second, third string guy. We have an availability over here. You're going to be our top guy at our outside linebacker position, probably have a good chance of being our leader in sacks. And we've got X marketing opportunity over here that there's a lot of layers that are going to come into this. I think it's going to create more parity in college football. I really do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's good for the game, but at the same time, Georgia fans might not because your recruiting classes might lose a 5-star every now and again that they just end up randomly somewhere else. And that's okay. It's okay because if you're not a fan of one of the top 10 programs in college football right now, you don't have a shot. Let's get more teams in here. Let's take advantage of what college football is all about, and let's go that route.
And I was going to say, if anybody's hesitant on NIL and what that's going to look like and mean, I would encourage everybody to go on YouTube and look at Mark Few, who's the head coach of Gonzaga basketball. He testified in front of the Senate.
Hey, we've got a phone call coming in. Blayne, don't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
I think we missed him twice now. It might be the third time. Hey, you're on the line with Blayne and Paul. Sorry we missed your call a couple times. Who are we talking with?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with your phone system.
Gerald.
I think it would be Georgia's chances to expand the playoff myself. Anytime they come in.
Yes.
Yes. Hey, so Gerald, I don't know if Blayne knows you or not. Blayne, you might, but Gerald calls in a good bit. We've missed him on the past few shows, but he's from Lafayette, Georgia. Do you know where that's at, Gerald?
I do.
I mean, not Gerald. Obviously, Gerald knows where it's at. You know where it's at, Blayne?
I do.
Hey, Gerald, there you go, buddy. Somebody knows where you live, man. I don't. I still don't. I've looked it up. But, yeah, I agree, Gerald. Georgia obviously would be in the playoffs more often than they've been with the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I don't really particularly like 12-team playoff.
Why not, Gerald?
Maybe 8.
Why?
I just don't.
But what? Give me a reason. Come on, Gerald.
Well, I'm not. He said a while ago, you get our 8. Has anybody really got a chance?
I mean, anything's possible, right? You're playing a 60-minute game. You don't think last year Coastal Carolina could have beaten Notre Dame?
A lot of teams could beat Notre Dame every year, but
Listen to Gerald.
I knew it was coming. I set him up.
I mean, they just don't seem to be no good in the playoff, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I just don't think that our 8, you've got much of a chance on that. I just really don't.
Is it just strictly the 8 through 12 you don't think deserves or has a chance, or you think that you don't like the home first 4 getting a bye, so to speak?
Yeah. Now if you just look at usually 9th and 10th, right? Like, how many of them's got 3 losses?
There's a lot.
See what I mean?
There's a lot.
Well, Gerald, the only thing I'd throw to you is now, what if some of the chances now are SEC teams, like let's say the years that Mississippi State had a great run under Dan Mullen when he was there, and they lose 2 or 3 games, but they were really, really good. They even got really close, either beat or got really close to beating Alabama one year. So I think what it's going to do is, I think the country is going to be really upset by this, because I think way more SEC teams are going to be in the playoffs, and
That's a good point.
You have a huge chance of having SEC national championships over and over again. SEC teams playing against each other in national championships, which no one is going to be happy with, and they'll be wanting to push it to 16, 20 teams. So be careful what you wish for in terms of that aspect.
Well, but still, they've already been. Georgia should have been in more than once. More than one time.
Yeah.
So it didn't work out for that. And Alabama should have been in same win the conference. You're going to go with that. But, even though they had 1 loss. But, I don't know. It just, you don't want to get too many.
Yep. You never want to get too many teams in the college football playoff and too many girlfriends, Gerald. Isn't that the golden rule?
Yeah, because you know what's going to happen. That 13th team, we should have been in that.
Yep. Yep.
5 or 10 years down the road, you have another expansion, be 16.
Next thing you know,
we'll wind up like basketball. Have 16.
And next thing you know, you got 64 with 4 playing in to get in, right?
Yeah, 64. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I don't keep up with basketball. I got one more thing here, and I don't want to say no names because it's too early yet, but Georgia's recruiting a guy from Lafayette. He'll be a senior this coming year. He knows who I'm talking about. He just ran.
Oh, yeah.
Matter of fact, yeah. So, y'all have a good day.
Hey, Gerald. Gerald, I'm glad Blayne got to talk with you.
Nice to kind of meet you over the phone here, Gerald.
Yeah, you too.
All right, Gerald.
Have a good night.
That's Gerald, folks. If you've been around long enough, you know Gerald. Blayne, you just got to meet Gerald. Congratulations. Gerald brings some good stuff. It feels like I'm talking to my grandfather. He's just chilling up in the mountains. I think, from what I know, Lafayette, like northwest Georgia, from what he's told me, I think. Let's see here.
Oh, yeah, northwest Georgia, definitely. So.
That's where it's at? Okay, cool. Let's see. Tristan West says, we have to pray that some of our guys don't enter the transfer portal, get injured, or get in trouble before the season starts. We have to be good and lucky at the same time. Yeah, I totally agree. Dave McMahon, if you're watching, go ahead and give us a call with those stats, brother. Chuck Ward, with NIL kicking in, how much of an advantage is it for teams in states like Florida, Texas, and Tennessee that have no state income tax?
Yeah, we were talking about that before. I don't think, obviously, any kind of money that you make and there's no state income tax, it's going to be, that's going to be a break for you. But we don't know how significant of a break that will be in terms of, and if teams will say, okay, well, we'll be able to offset it by just, having more of a marketing package for you, things like that. So that could be negligible in my opinion.
Let's see. Dave just tried to call in, and I missed it. My bad, Dave. Let's see. Any team in the playoff has a chance. Better teams are beat by lesser teams every year, says Not Just Rocks. I totally agree, man. Get in the playoffs, you get a pumped-up team, and I keep referring to them. Like last year, you get a pumped-up Coastal Carolina team. You get a pumped-up Cincinnati team. I know they lost to Georgia, obviously, but you start thinking about those schools. You get a pumped-up Western Michigan team. Like those type of schools, man, anything can happen because you never know when their next opportunity is going to be to get in that playoff. I think we've got Dave here. Dave, you with us?
I am with you guys. How are you doing?
Dave, doing great, man. Having a great show tonight, talking about some 12-team playoffs. You know, you've been watching the whole time.
I mean, it's going to be tough. Both Chuck and Gerald had some good points there, and I also like what Blayne had to say about the more and more SEC teams going to be making it. I mean, I agree 100% with that, and also they're going to be advancing. So maybe it'll be like like 3 or 4 of the final 8 and 2 or 3 of the final 4, and like you said, the championship. So I mean, look, people are upset about the SEC nationwide. They're going to be even more upset, I believe.
I think Blayne hit the nail on the head with that one. Yeah, you're going to see,
and I think it's going to help out the teams that finish second. And like I think like how much Georgia and Alabama have dominated recruiting, as you both know, as all the listeners know as well. They're going to be probably either one or both of them in the SEC championship in the next X amount of years. It's going to help out teams that are finishing second that have no chance to pass an Alabama or pass a Georgia on those things. So, I mean, those are the teams I think are going to benefit the most out of this 12-team playoff.
And that's what I was kind of getting at, Dave. Talking to Blayne was saying, yes, I was referencing NC State, but sure, you could reference any team. You could reference Tennessee. You could reference Texas A&M.
The two the Texas A&M or 2 Mississippi schools or
right.
that they might benefit well.
Right, they grab a 5-star that they weren't going to get normally.
Look at this year, guys. Sorry.
Go ahead, Blayne.
No, go ahead. I mean, you're exactly right.
I was going to say, look at this year with in the 2021 season. A lot of people think Kentucky will be the second best team in the SEC East. Kentucky, they go in, they finish the year with 2 losses, and one of them's to Georgia, and they don't get in the SEC championship game. Kentucky could end up an 8 seed in the college football playoff. I mean, that's a lot of incentives for a program like Mark Stoops runs to get higher caliber kids, which they're already doing a great job of recruiting anyways right now at Kentucky.
And the more we flesh this out,
last few years has been great.
The more we flesh this out, Dave, the more I realize that schools like Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, I mean, you name it, right? I don't know if those schools are necessarily happy with the 12-team playoff because maybe they would have just liked to be left out. Obviously, you want to get in, but if you're that 5th team, yeah, it sucks. But now, if you go to a 12-team playoff, just like Blayne said, Kentucky's going to start I'm telling you, Kentucky's going to start grabbing some high 4-star kids because they're going to say, look, you can play here right away. They're taking 12 teams to the playoff. Anything can happen in 60 minutes. As we're fleshing this out and just talking about it more, I don't know if you're exactly happy being one of those top power conference teams because of what we talked about.
Well, I think you might be happy a little bit just because there's a little bit more wiggle room. So say you have let's say a major injury going to your conference championship game and you lose by a little bit, instead of being completely out, you're still in because you'd probably be like a number 8 or 9 out of the 12 teams. You might not make a bye week, but you'll still be in it and stuff like that, which you might not have been able to be before.
But Dave, what do you have for us? Man, our phone line is blowing up right now, Blayne. I know we have an hour-long show, and we're right close to that, but we have missed 10 calls since Dave's been on the phone. I'm just letting you know.
No.
Dave, what do you have, Dave?
So what I want to talk about a few things. I mean, you've talked about which teams in the past that Georgia may have made in previous years. That was a big discussion amongst us before, and a little bit on the air. I definitely think that Kirby's last 4 seasons would have been part of that 12. I mean, he's definitely been part of the top 12 teams, like most people said. And people were asking what about Mark Richt's team? Well, I, in my opinion, 3 definites in 2002, 5, and 7, the 2 SEC championship seasons, and Georgia was definitely one of the most dominant teams late in 2007. But I think also 2003, 2004, 2012, at least 2 of those 3 would have made it. I mean, Georgia lost the SEC championship in 2003. In 2004, they were in the top 10, every single poll, basically in the ESPN poll. And in 2012, they had that horrible loss to South Carolina, but they barely lost to Alabama in the SEC championship game, and so they would have probably made it as well. So 2 of those 3, I definitely think under Kirby, and then under Coach Richt, and then obviously 97. Donovan's team would have made it. 92, Goff's team would have made it, and I counted at least close to about 9 or 10 of Dooley's teams would have made it. If you want to even go back even further.
There you go, Georgia fans. So
you all agree with all that?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, how can Georgia it is so subjective, Dave, when you get down to the end of it. But those Georgia, all those years definitely had top 10 caliber teams. So, I mean,
and now, so everyone's going to complain about, if you're the 13th team and some of that, that's going to be the hard part and some of that.
But see, that's the thing. Like, I feel like you have a legitimate complaint most years at top 5. If you're the 5th team, you could.
I agree with you.
You could really put yourself in the top 4, and you could fight with that on your back. If you're 13th, bro, like, do you really want to start fighting? Like going on national television? Could you imagine going on national television after you don't play in your conference championship game, and you're like Mississippi State, for example, you're 13th, you didn't play in the SEC championship game, and you get on there and you're like, guys, we deserve to be in this playoff. It's like we haven't even heard from you in 2 weeks.
You're going to see all these signs that say we're number 12, we're number 12.
Yeah, it's just I hear what people are saying with like people complaining about the 13th spot. I don't think it's anywhere justified like it is on the 5th.
Okay. I also want to do a quick shout out, because I want you to have more of your callers call in, because I think that's you all do a great job on answering their questions. But I want to congratulate the new track coach at Georgia. I mean, we just lost a great track coach, and we get another track coach at Georgia. She just won the national championship at USC, and I think it's going to be great for the track team. And I also want to give a shout out to the 8 participants that are going to be playing in next week's U.S. Open golf tournament. Hopefully, Georgia, it'll be the first time that a Georgia golfer has won the U.S. Open. They have 4 runner-up times at the U.S. Open, so hopefully this time they could win it all. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Blayne. Now you get back to the callers. They're good stuff.
As always, Dave, thank you so much, Dave. We had somebody calling in a bunch. Call back in now that Dave's off the phone there. Line's open. Tristan West says, and this is my point, Blayne, we'll get off of here soon. I know you got kids. You got to go.
They're asleep, man. I'm good.
Oh, you're good. Tristan West says, I hate to say it, but I'm a selfish Georgia fan. I like our chances in the 4-team playoff rather than the 12-team playoff. I love our recruiting status, and I don't want to share that with all the other teams. That's what I'm getting at, guys. Like, when you really look deep into it, Blayne, there are pros and cons of this. Georgia is now one of the top 5 programs in the nation. It's tough, man. It's tough. If you start looking at both sides of this, there's going to be other schools, like you said, Kentucky. Every SEC school now, not that they're on nowhere near level playing field with Georgia and Alabama, even Florida recruiting-wise right now, or Auburn, really. But the other teams now have a chance to at least bring in more 4-stars, maybe a couple 5-stars here and there, because they're going to say, look, we've got 12 spots. We don't have to be top 4. We can slip up a little bit. It's going to be interesting. I really like it. I like it for the fact that you're going to see some teams that never would ever see the Final Four. You'll finally get to see teams that go undefeated like UCF, where they say they're the national champion. They'll get a chance to get their butts spanked by a true team in one of the top 4 spots. That's my thought on it.
It's also going to place a premium on coaching in terms of who can make adjustments, not only in-game adjustments, but in-season adjustments, because a team that loses a game early, now they have to, there's that pressure of being perfect, but that team that loses a game early and they come back and they just are playing red hot at the end of the year, maybe they sprinkle 2 losses in there early, but in the last 6-7 games, they go on just torrent run through the schedule and look really great doing it, and have fixed some of the ills that were there early on that the committee may see. They say, hey, this coach has these guys, they've made the adjustments necessary, they're playing well. There's going to be a premium on coaching, and there's going to be a more parity in recruiting, I think, as you mentioned as well. So
we've got another person in here. Danny Wilkins is saying 18 playoff is enough. 12 is ridiculous. I want to say you could be right, but I also want to go back to the fact that if it's just 12 teams, who's fighting for those bye weeks? If it's just 8 teams, rather, I don't know. I think that there's 2 layers to this. You get into the top 12, you get in the playoff. You get into the top 4, you get a bye week, you get to rest your guys, you get to watch more film. It's a bonus, so to speak, for really finishing with a great record, whereas 5 through 12 are now going to have to battle it out before they come and play you. So really, it should leave no excuse for the top 4. They're more rested, Blayne. They're better prepared. They're a better team to go ahead and win that first game. And then it's just like we're back to a 4-team playoff anyway. But that's kind of my thought on that. Let's see. Robert Piper says, Kirby is still a great recruiter. Look how many players he beat us out of when he was at Bama. Offensive players at that. I will bet on him anytime. Yeah, Robert, I don't think you're going to see recruiting dropping. I'm just saying there's going to be more parity in college football, which is always a good thing. Blayne, I don't see that phone call coming back through here, so I think we're going to wrap it up. What are your final thoughts, Blayne, on a great show? It really took us down the road, NIL, college football playoff, recruiting. I think we did a really good job on that. What are your thoughts?
I enjoyed it. I think that everybody needs to make sure that you are subscribed over at UGASports.com, especially so you can catch stuff on the vault during this busy June of recruiting. Got guys like Tyler Booker coming into town next weekend on an official visit, who is, by my estimation, the number 1 target on Georgia's board in terms of offensive line play. Him and Ernest Green right there with each other. So a host of IMG prospects making their way to Athens next week. So if you do not subscribe to the vault, you want to make sure to get over there, because we are going to have updates galore throughout the week and throughout the weekend as those guys visit on the 18th to the 20th. And we have the 5-star challenge coming up this week that we'll be covering up close and personal.
Yes, we will indeed. Q Flow says, thanks, guys. Great show. Well, Q Flow, Barry Anderson, Donnie Wilkerson, Robert Piper, Not Just Rocks, Martin, Tristram, let's see, Taiwan Wallace, some guys we didn't even get to this time. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will be back next week, 7:30 p.m. Sunday night, to discuss, like Blayne said, the Rivals 5-Star Challenge, where we're going to be up close and personal with a ton of Georgia targets, as well as we can keep going on this 12-team playoff talk. I really enjoyed it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe this week, and we will catch you next week. For Blayne, I'm Paul. See you later.